Pick those up, sweetheart. That is what station manager Derek Whitfield said 47 minutes before his entire world collapsed. Savannah's train station hums with morning commuters who never look up from their phones. Megan O'Brien works the coffee cart on platform 2, her weathered hand steady as she pours drinks, movements precise and efficient in a way no one notices. She wears a faded employee vest over cargo pants, her hair pulled back tight. When she reaches for cups on the top shelf, the sleeves ride up to reveal unusual scars on her forearms, burn patterns and surgical precision marks, each one a story no one asks about. A pair of worn combat boots sits under her cart, leather cracked and splitting at the seams, laces frayed from use. The boots are hers. Were hers. Now they are a talisman she keeps close, the way some people keep photographs. Each morning at 6:38 a.m., a blind veteran named Thomas Reid taps his way to her cart with a white cane. His milky eyes are unfocused, clouded like morning fog over water. His own boots are shabby, splitting at the heel. She guides him to platform 3 with a gentle hand on his elbow, her touch professional and practiced, the kind of touch that says I have held things that mattered and I will not drop you. She does not tell him her name. He does not ask. They exist in a space of mutual respect that requires no introduction. Station manager Whitfield watches from his office window on the second floor, his jaw tight with irritation. He is 38, designer suit, slicked hair, the kind of man who refers to the station as his kingdom and everyone in it as his subjects. When Megan returns to her cart, Whitfield is already waiting, arms crossed, his smile sharp as broken glass. Behind him, 2 security guards lean against the information booth, coffee cups in hand. Heard you talking to the blind guy again, Whitfield says. His voice carries across the platform like a pronouncement. That's very charitable of you. We don't pay you to be a tour guide. Megan does not look at him. She adjusts the napkin stack on her counter. I'm on my break when I help him, sir. Are you? Whitfield steps closer. He is the kind of man who uses proximity as a weapon. Because it looks to me like you're on the clock. Costing this station money. He turns to the guards. Gentlemen, I'll give you $500 if the coffee girl lasts a week without getting fired. Any takers? One guard laughs. The other one does not. Neither one looks at Megan. The bet hangs in the air like humidity, a thick, inescapable, impossible to ignore. Whitfield's power is old money channeled through city contracts. His brother-in-law is the district transportation commissioner. His best friend from prep school sits on the station authority board. He has been skimming maintenance contracts for 3 years, overpaying his brother-in-law's shell company for work that was never done, falsifying invoices in the office upstairs while Megan pours coffee and Thomas Reid rides the same train he has ridden every Tuesday and Thursday for 18 months. Whitfield knows none of it will stick. Not with his network. The morning rush begins. Commuters flood platform 2, all of them moving fast, all of them not looking at Megan. She pours coffee. Latte. Cappuccino. Black. 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 Her hands do not shake. They have held tourniquets in place while sand blew across a combat zone. They have held the hands of dying men who asked if their mothers would forgive them. A coffee cup is nothing. Whitfield is nothing. But Whitfield feels the weight of her non-reaction. He appears at her cart at 7:14 a.m., right as the morning rush peaks. His movement is calculated, he times it for maximum witnesses. He says nothing. He simply reaches across her counter and sweeps her tray of filled cups across the platform with the back of his arm. The sound is catastrophic. Cups explode on tile. Coffee spreads in a brown Rorschach across the concrete. Commuters stop. Some film it. One woman gasps. You know what? Whitfield's voice is loud enough for the whole platform to hear. I'm tired of this station looking unprofessional. Clean it up. Then he throws a stack of inventory sheets at her feet. The papers scatter. Some blow off the platform toward the tracks. His face is flushed now, the color of a man expecting anger, expecting tears, expecting the kind of emotional response that would justify what he has done. Megan kneels to gather the papers. The movement is smooth, practiced, the kind of kneeling that suggests she has done this 1,000 times in 1,000 different ways. Her jaw clenches once, barely perceptible, a muscle twitch that could be anything, a cough, a breath, the adjustment of a thought. Her face is an impassive mask that reveals nothing of the Master Chief Petty Officer who performed combat triage in Marja, who carried a blind man 6 miles through enemy territory on her back while her own legs bled into her boots. She gathers the papers. All of them. She gathers the cups. She kneels in the mess Whitfield made and cleans it with her hands and a rag from under her cart. Commuters watch. The guards watch. Whitfield watches, waiting for the break, for the moment when she crumbles. It never comes. Her hands are steady. Her breathing is even. She does not look up at him once. The platform clock reads 7:22 a.m. when she finishes. By 7:11 a.m., she has reset her cart, restocked her cups, and poured 43 coffee orders without missing a single one. Her customer service voice is warm, professional, unchanged. A middle-aged woman leaves a $5 tip and tells her she has a kind soul. Megan thanks her quietly. At 8:15 a.m., Thomas Reid arrives for his usual Thursday journey to Jacksonville. His white cane taps 3 times before he reaches her counter. She is already there, hand extended, her voice soft. "Good morning, sir." Platform 3, same as always. He takes her hand. They walk together through the station, his cane tapping the rhythm of the tiles, her body a steady guide through the chaos of morning travel. Whitfield watches from his office window, his fists clenched, his jaw working as if he is chewing on something bitter. When they reach platform 3, Thomas releases her hand but does not let go immediately. His fingers linger on her wrist. He runs his scarred fingers across her forearm, feeling the calluses that line her skin, the patterns of surgical scars that mark where bandages have been wrapped thousands of times. His clouded eyes focus on nothing and everything simultaneously. "You tied field tourniquets," he whispers. His voice is barely audible above the station noise. "I can feel the pattern scars. The way they sit on your wrist. The burn marks from the friction." He pauses. "I know those scars. I've felt hands like this before." Megan does not speak. Her throat feels tight, the way it does when you are holding something inside that wants to come out. She has spent 18 months pouring coffee in this station, watching this man navigate the platforms with the quiet dignity of someone who has already lost everything and refused to stay lost. She has guided him 17 times. They have never exchanged names. "I was in Marja," Thomas says quietly. His hand squeezes her wrist once. "Battalion lost someone there." "Woman." "Navy Special Forces." "Call sign was Phantom. She carried me 6 miles with my eyes melted shut and sang to me the whole way so I would know I was still alive." He releases her. His hand falls to his side. "Thank you," he says. "For whatever you're doing here. Whatever this is. Thank you." The train pulls into platform 3. The doors hiss open like a held breath finally released. Thomas turns toward the sound, his cane finding the edge of the platform, his body moving with the practiced ease of someone who has learned to navigate darkness as both literal and metaphorical fact. He boards without looking back. Megan stands on the platform as the train accelerates. Her hands are not shaking. She has been careful about that. But her chest rises and falls once, deeply, the kind of breath you take when you have been holding everything in and finally have permission to exist for just a moment. The platform clock reads 8:43 a.m. In exactly 19 hours, Thomas Reid's heart will seize on platform 3 during the evening commute. In exactly 19 hours, Megan will drop her coffee cart like it weighs nothing and move toward the sound of his body hitting the ground. In exactly 19 hours, Derek Whitfield will activate his network, phone calls to his brother-in-law the commissioner, a complaint filed with the licensing board, even a tip to a local reporter about an unqualified employee practicing medicine without a license. But that is not today. Today, Megan O'Brien returns to Platform 2 and pours coffee for people who do not know that the woman serving them survived Marja. They do not know that her hands have held lives together with equipment meant to hold something else. They do not know that she is here, at a coffee cart in Savannah, because a blind man needed protection and she was the only person left alive who could give it. Whitfield watches from his office window, his face still flushed with the anger of a man who expected submission and received nothing. He does not know any of this. He knows only that he tried to break her and she did not break. The trains come and go. The commuters flow through the station like water around stone. Megan pours coffee and waits for Thomas to come back on Tuesday. The real storm is coming. But Megan O'Brien is not the one who should be afraid of storms. Platform 3, morning rush, 300 commuters waiting for the 8:22 to Atlanta. Thomas Reid stands near the platform edge, white cane tapping against the concrete in a rhythm Megan has come to recognize. 1 tap, pause, 2 taps, listen. His scarred hands grip the cane with the confidence of someone who has learned to navigate darkness. The station smells like diesel exhaust and stale coffee, the fluorescent lights humming their mechanical song overhead. Thomas tilts his head, listening to the crowd, to the trains, to the world the way sighted people never learn. Then his hand flies to his chest. The cane clatters to the concrete. The sound cuts through the station noise like a gunshot. Thomas staggers backward, his breath coming in gasps, his body folding in on itself. He collapses hard, his knees striking the platform edge first, then his entire weight falling forward onto the tile. Commuters scatter. Phones come out, recording, not calling for help. A businessman in a grey suit shouts, "Is anyone a doctor?" but no one moves. An elderly woman backs away, her purse clutched to her chest. A teenage girl films him, her screen capturing Thomas's face twisted in pain, his body convulsing with the electrical chaos of a heart imploding. Megan is 40 feet away at her coffee cart when she hears the cane hit concrete. Her head snaps up. She sees Thomas on the ground. She sees the crowd forming a ring of spectators. She sees phones raised like weapons, recording instead of helping. For 3 seconds she doesn't move. 3 seconds that feel like hours. The nursing credential she used to get this job is real. Her hands know sutures and tourniquets and the exact pressure point to stop arterial bleeding. But her presence at Savannah Station isn't random. Thomas Reid is a witness in a military contractor fraud case, the kind of case that reaches into Pentagon basements and emerges with redacted files and classified injunctions. Someone already tried to kill him 6 months ago in Seattle. A car had jumped a curb. He survived because his cane caught on a storm drain. This time wouldn't be random either. Her mission is surveillance and protection. Nothing more. She's a ghost in a coffee cart, present but invisible. Blowing her cover means mission failure. It means federal investigation compromise. It means the end of a career built on the ability to disappear. Thomas's lips are turning blue. His body has gone rigid. Megan runs. She abandons her cart without a word, her shoes striking the platform tile in a 4-beat rhythm that carries her 40 feet in 5 seconds. She drops to her knees beside Thomas, her fingers finding his neck. The pulse is there but thready, weak, fluttering like a wounded bird trying to escape a cage. His skin is grey. His breathing is shallow, almost absent. Distended jugular veins. Muffled heart sounds. The classic triad screams through her muscle memory like a command from a command center she hasn't answered to in 3 years. Cardiac tamponade. Fluid is compressing his heart. With every beat, the organ is strangling itself. Without intervention, Thomas Reid has maybe 3 minutes before his heart stops entirely. Maybe 2. A woman in the crowd yells, "Don't move him." Another voice shouts, "Someone call 911." But phones keep recording. The circle of spectators tightens. They're watching. They're documenting. They're doing nothing. Megan's jaw clenches once. Just once. She reaches into her vest pocket and pulls out a pocket knife, a small, elegant thing with a titanium blade, the kind of knife you carry when you never know when you'll need to do emergency medicine with nothing but improvisation and training. Her fingers move with the precision of someone who has opened chest cavities in combat zones with less. From her apron, she pulls a ballpoint pen. She twists the body free from the ink tube, creating a hollow shaft. The crowd gasps. Someone screams, "What are you doing?" A man moves toward her, hands raised. "You need to stop." Megan doesn't look up. She locates the second intercostal space, mid-clavicular line. Her fingers map the anatomy through Thomas's skin like reading Braille. She finds the landmarks, the rib, the space above it where the needle belongs. Pain was information. Her instructors had taught her that in Marja, in a field hospital that smelled like blood and diesel fuel and human desperation. Pain tells you where the problem is. Pain is data. She presses the knife blade to his chest. The cut is 2 centimeters long, precise, surgical. Blood wells up immediately, dark and urgent. A woman in the crowd turns away and vomits. Someone shouts for security. Megan doesn't pause. She doesn't hesitate. Muscle memory has overridden every instinct to maintain her cover, every protocol, every safety mechanism her mind installed to protect her identity. The blade goes deeper. Through skin and muscle. Into the pleural space. Thomas gasps. His eyes, clouded from the IED that took his sight in Helmand Province 2 years ago, go even wider, and for a second Megan sees the moment of trust there. He doesn't know who she is. He knows her hands. He knows the way she moves. He knows something. She inserts the hollowed pen into the opening. The metal shaft slides in at an angle, careful, controlled, threading toward the pericardial sac like a needle finding thread. The relief comes as a rush of air. The hiss of air escaping. That's the sound of fluid draining from around his heart. That's the sound of 3 minutes becoming a future. Thomas's breathing catches, then deepens. His body relaxes incrementally. The rigid tension loosens. His heart rate, which has been racing at a panic sprint, begins to slow. A man in the crowd shouts she stabbed him. A woman screams, "Call the police." But 3 people have actually called 911, and paramedics are already rolling toward the station, their sirens cutting through the morning commute like a knife through silk. Thomas's hand reaches out blindly. His scarred fingers find Megan's arm. "What did you?" he starts, his voice hoarse, confused. "Pericardiocentesis," Megan says quietly. Her voice is steady, clinical, a voice from another life entirely. "Fluid around your heart. You would have died in about 90 seconds. His fingers tighten on her arm. Understanding floods across his face. Not understanding what just happened medically, though that too. Understanding something else. Understanding that the woman in the coffee cart has hands that know how to save lives on a battlefield. The paramedics arrive. They take in the scene: blood, a hollowed pen, a woman kneeling beside a blind man whose eyes are wet. They don't ask questions. They immediately pivot to assessment. "What's his status?" one of them barks. "Cardiac tamponade. Pericardiocentesis completed. Heart rate dropping. Breathing improving," Megan reports. Her voice has shifted into a register that belongs to someone with authority. "BP was dropping when I intervened. O2 sat was 68 when I started." He's responsive. The paramedics exchange a look. One of them nods at Megan. "Good work," he says. It's not a question. It's recognition. They load Thomas onto the stretcher with practiced efficiency. Within seconds, they're running toward the ambulance, their footsteps echoing across the platform with the urgency of combat medicine. The ambulance doors close. The sirens climb to a wail. The vehicle pulls away, disappearing into Savannah traffic. The crowd disperses slowly, the spectacle over, the phones lowering. But something has changed in the platform energy. People are talking in hushed voices. Some are reviewing the footage on their screens. Others are walking away from the scene as if they'd witnessed something they didn't fully understand. Megan stands. She's breathing normally. Her hands are steady. There's blood on her palms and under her fingernails, and she looks at it for exactly 2 seconds before her gaze shifts to the far end of the platform. Station manager Derek Whitfield stands 60 feet away, his face gone completely purple. His mouth is open. His hands are clenched into fists at his sides. For a moment he looks like he might explode from pure rage, all his plans for humiliation, all his carefully cultivated authority, all his betting and mocking and throwing papers at a woman whose hands he never actually saw. His phone is already at his ear. His lips are moving. Megan watches him, her expression absolutely neutral, as he talks to someone on the other end. His face gets redder. His voice gets louder, though she can't hear the words. He's calling. He's already calling. Megan walks back to her coffee cart. She wipes her hands on her apron. The blood stains don't come out completely. She refills a cup of black coffee and sets it on the counter, waiting for the next customer in line. The morning commute continues around her like water flowing around a stone. The 8:16 to Atlanta boards 10 minutes late due to the emergency. Commuters climb aboard, some of them still filming, still talking about the woman at the coffee cart. Some of them still don't know what they saw. Thomas Reid's white cane lies on the platform tile where it fell, abandoned and waiting. Megan stares at it as she pours drinks with steady hands, and she understands with perfect clarity that her cover has just died on this concrete platform. Her mission isn't finished. But it's about to become something else entirely. Whitfield's office smelled like cologne and desperation. He sat behind his desk with his phone already in his hand, his college roommate's number pulled up before the ambulance even cleared the platform. The regional transit director picked up on the second ring. They golfed together every Saturday, had since 1998, and Whitfield didn't bother with pleasantries. "We have a liability nightmare," he said, his voice steady despite the rage thundering through his chest. "One of my employees just performed unauthorized medical procedures on a passenger. Open cardiac intervention with a pocket knife. 300 witnesses. It's already going viral." The director's voice crackled back, skeptical at first, then concerned. Then alarmed. By the time Whitfield hung up, the wheels were already turning, a complaint filed with the Business Licensing Board, a notation in the city's employment liability system. He made another call, this one to a local news reporter he'd cultivated for exactly these situations, dropping a tip about an unqualified coffee cart attendant claiming medical expertise and endangering public safety. The reporter took notes, asked follow-up questions, promised to investigate. Whitfield smiled. The narrative was already shifting. By evening news, it wouldn't be a heroic medical intervention. It would be a regulatory failure. An untrained woman playing doctor. A lawsuit waiting to happen. 20 minutes after the ambulance left, Megan knocked on his office door. She'd changed out of her blood-stained uniform, her coffee cart cleaned and restocked by station staff who'd barely looked at her. Her employee badge hung around her neck, her vest folded neatly in her hands. She was the picture of professional composure, not a tremor, not a hesitation, and that made Whitfield's jaw tighten even more. She should have been terrified. She should have been crying. Instead, she stood in his doorway with the bearing of someone who'd already made peace with what was coming. He gestured for her to enter and shut the door behind her with a soft click that sounded like a trap closing. His office was all dark wood and framed commendations, a space designed to broadcast authority. He took his time, letting the silence build, letting her stand there while he swiveled in his leather chair and picked up his phone to check the news alerts. Already trending. Already a problem for the station's insurance carrier. "Good. You've put me in a very difficult position, Megan," he said finally, not looking at her. His voice had that practiced tone of disappointed authority, the voice of someone used to being obeyed. He stood and walked to his desk, where he'd already laid out her employee vest in a perfect rectangle, the navy blue fabric stark against the mahogany surface. He placed his hand on it, almost tenderly, then pushed it toward her with a slow, deliberate movement. His smile was the smile of a man who'd finally cornered something he'd been hunting. The city's insurance won't cover what you did out there. They're already calling. The licensing board is already asking questions. And my legal team tells me we're looking at negligent practice, endangerment, operating outside your scope of practice. Megan didn't look at the vest. She looked at Whitfield's face, and what she saw there was a man who'd finally found a weapon that worked. He leaned back in his chair, savoring the moment. I don't have a choice, he continued, and there was almost genuine regret in his voice now, the performance of a man who'd convinced himself he was the reasonable one. I cannot in good conscience have you represent this station. The city cannot afford the liability. Effective immediately, you are terminated. Security will escort you out. Your final paycheck will be mailed to your home address. Don't come back. He picked up his phone as if she'd already left, as if she was already erased from this office, from this platform, from the story he was constructing. That's all. Megan picked up the vest from his desk. The fabric was soft from 2 years of wear, the station logo faded slightly at the shoulders where the sun had caught it through the skylights. She folded it once, then again, the creases precise as surgical drapes. Her hands didn't shake. They never did. She'd worked in a field hospital in Marja with shrapnel coming through the tent walls, with 3 surgeons and 400 wounded, with sand grinding between skin and bone and no one thinking about fold lines or precision. But muscle memory was muscle memory. She folded the vest the way she'd been taught to fold uniforms at basic training, the way they'd taught her to fold bodies in field bags when there was nothing else to be done. With respect. With finality. With the knowledge that some things, once folded, stay folded. Thank you for the opportunity, she said, her voice level as a surgical laser. 10 words. Not apologetic. Not bitter. Just a statement of fact. She tucked the vest under her arm and walked out of his office while Whitfield was still staring at his phone, already composing the email that would officially document her termination. The door closed behind her with the same soft click it had opened with. The station laundry was in the basement, a humid room with industrial washers and a smell like bleach and hot cotton. Megan pushed through the swinging doors at 11 p.m. when the night shift was skeleton crew, just one attendant sorting towels in the corner who barely glanced up. She carried her vest to the folding table, the same table where she'd folded her dress blues before coming to Savannah, before accepting this assignment, before she'd locked away Master Chief Petty Officer and become just Megan, just a nurse, just a woman who pushed a coffee cart and asked nothing of anyone. The fluorescent lights hummed their institutional drone. She laid the vest out flat on the table and began to fold it. Once, then again, the creases sharp enough to cut. She'd folded this vest 200 times since she arrived at the station. 200 mornings picking it up from this same table, 200 evenings returning it. Now she folded it one last time, and this time the fold was different. This time it was ceremonial. This time she understood what it meant. A blow dryer sat on a shelf near the industrial presses, someone's forgotten personal item. She picked it up and used it, holding the vest in front of the warm air stream, letting the humidity dry out of the fabric, letting it crisp and set. When the creases were sharp enough, she folded it one more time, making the final rectangle small enough to hold in 2 hands. The way you'd carry something precious. The way you'd carry something finished. Outside the laundry room window, Savannah's night pressed against the glass, humid and dark and full of rain that hadn't started falling yet. She could hear the 11:02 p.m. train pulling into the platform upstairs, the screech of brakes, the hiss of hydraulics releasing pressure. She could hear the departure announcement crackling over the intercom system, names and destinations and times that meant nothing to her right now. The city was still turning. The trains were still running. Derek Whitfield was still in his office, sending emails, securing his narrative, cementing his version of the story into place. And Megan stood in the laundry room basement with her folded vest and her ruined assignment and the knowledge that she'd just failed the mission she'd been given. Not because she'd revealed what she was, she hadn't meant to do that, hadn't planned for Thomas Reid to collapse on platform 3 and force her hands to remember what they'd been trained to do. She'd failed because she'd let Whitfield see her. Not as a nurse, but as something he could break. He didn't know what he'd broken yet. He had no idea that upstairs on the platform, a man in a faded Marine's cap was still thinking about her technique, still processing the impossible combination of civilian scrubs and combat-level precision. But Whitfield knew he'd found her weakness, and that was almost as dangerous. She carried the folded vest to her locker. Inside were 3 changes of clothes, a thermos with her name on it from Thomas Reid, and a single photograph she'd kept from another life, herself in dress blues, standing in front of a Black Hawk helicopter in Kandahar, her call sign, Phantom, stenciled on the fuselage behind her in letters 4 feet tall. She'd kept that photograph for exactly this moment, the moment when the pretense fell away and she had to decide what came next. She placed the folded vest on top of the photograph and closed the locker door. When she turned to leave, the night attendant was watching her from across the laundry room, a look on her face like she'd just witnessed something she didn't have words for. Megan nodded once and walked past her, through the swinging doors, up the basement stairs, and out into the humid Savannah night where the rain was finally beginning to fall. Above her, the train station blazed with fluorescent light, oblivious to the fact that everything about to happen would start with a phone call from a Pentagon office that Derek Whitfield had no idea was watching. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was that Megan knew exactly what was coming, and she'd just made herself impossible to protect. Megan was packing her locker the next morning, personal coffee mug, spare work gloves, a photo of her son Danny taken 3 years ago when he still smiled at family dinners, when the station's front doors burst open like a breech charge. Danny ran through, 15 meters from the security checkpoint, a shadow box clutched against his chest like body armor, his voice cracking across the marble platform, "Mom, they need to see these." The morning commuter crowd froze. 8:47 a.m. Platform 3 was packed with professionals checking phones, tourists consulting schedules, the regular pilgrims of the 7:15 northbound. They all turned. Danny's face was streaked red, tears streaming like tactical face paint, his whole body shaking with the fury only a teenager can summon when he realizes the world got his mother wrong. His hands trembled as he held the shadow box higher. Behind him, the station doors opened again. Thomas Reid entered in a wheelchair, pushed by a paramedic wearing the teal jacket of Seattle General. Fresh bandages wrapped his chest, white gauze stark against his scarred skin, his milky eyes wet with something that looked like vindication. The paramedic positioned him at the platform's center, then stepped back. The crowd's murmuring died. A man in military police dress uniform entered next, walking 3 steps behind Thomas like a guardian. His boots struck tile with the precise rhythm of ceremony, click, 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 each step a promise. Behind him came Officer Marcus Chen, the night shift veteran security guard, the one who had worked 3 tours in Kandahar and never talked about it. Chen wore his dress uniform under his security jacket, medals visible, and his posture had changed. Not slouched. Not resigned. He stood like a man who had been waiting for this moment. Thomas raised one scarred hand. The silence deepened. You could hear the fluorescent lights hum their electronic drone, could hear a woman's phone vibrate somewhere in the crowd, could hear the distant rumble of a train on the tracks below the platform. That woman, Thomas said, his voice carrying across the cavernous station like a declaration, is Phantom. Her call sign from Marja. Someone gasped. A phone camera clicked. The crowd's collective breath held in their chests like a secret they'd been keeping without knowing it. Officer Chen stepped forward with the fluid precision of a man performing a ritual he'd rehearsed in his mind for months. His boots aligned with the platform's center line. He straightened to parade rest, spine rigid as a flagpole, and when he spoke, his voice didn't come from his throat. It came from somewhere deeper, from 18 years of service and 3 tours and the kind of loss that never heals. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, "you are looking at Master Chief Petty Officer Megan O'Brien, United States Navy Special Forces." The words landed like thunder. Phones came up. The crowd's murmuring became a wave. Megan stood frozen by her locker, still in her coffee-stained vest, her hands gripping the locker door with the white-knuckle intensity of someone holding onto the last thing keeping them vertical. Her face remained expressionless, but Danny saw it, the microscopic tremble in her jaw, the way her shoulders tensed beneath her uniform like a predator coiling before a leap. The Marine colonel appeared next, stepping through the doors like a man walking into his own authority. His dress blues were immaculate, service medals arranged in perfect rows, his face carved from stone and sternness. He carried a tablet. When he spoke, his voice had the parade ground sharpness of someone accustomed to giving orders that changed people's lives. Master Chief Petty Officer Megan O'Brien, he read from the tablet, and the words seemed to reshape the air around them. 2 Navy Crosses. For Purple Hearts. Silver Star. Personally credited with saving 43 lives under enemy fire in Marja Province, Afghanistan. He paused. The crowd had stopped breathing. 43. The number hung in the station air. Like a revelation, like they'd all been walking past a hero every morning for weeks and thought she was just a nurse. Certified in Advanced Combat Trauma Care, the colonel continued. Instructor rating for Tactical Emergency Medicine. Deployed 3 times to theater. Commendation for Valor Under Fire, Sanjin Valley, 2009. He looked up from the tablet. She was working here under federal assignment to provide protective surveillance for Petty Officer Thomas Reid, a witness in an ongoing military contractor fraud investigation. The silence that followed was the kind of silence that breaks things. Not a phone beeped. Not a shoe scraped. A woman in a red coat slowly lowered her phone. A businessman's coffee cup drifted downward. The station held its breath like a patient on a ventilator, waiting to see if the next breath would come. Thomas raised his worn combat boots, the ones on his feet, leather cracked and split, soles separating from the uppers like they'd walked 1,000 miles they were never designed for. These boots, he said, and his voice cracked like a teenager's, are hers. She gave them to me after an IED blast melted mine to my legs. He raised his scarred hands, palms up like he was showing proof of something sacred. She carried me 6 miles through enemy fire. 6 miles through Taliban positions with me blind and bleeding and screaming. She didn't stop. She didn't slow down. She didn't set me down. His voice broke. And when we reached the evac point, her feet were blistered raw. Walking barefoot on burning sand because she gave me her boots to save my life. She walked that way to get me home. Tears streamed down his face. The crowd exhaled. Not a breath, a release. The kind of release that comes when people understand they've been wrong about someone fundamental. Danny stepped forward and opened the shadow box. Inside, arranged with military precision, lay Megan's medals. 2 Navy Crosses, their ribbon colors gleaming in the station's fluorescent light. For Purple Hearts, edges catching the luminescence like small copper flames. The Silver Star. Beneath them, a photograph, Megan 20 years younger, in dress blues, her face severe and beautiful and dangerous in a way that training builds. Beneath the photo, a nameplate, Phantom. The crowd erupted. It wasn't applause at first. It was the sound of recognition, of people realizing they'd stood next to greatness while checking their boarding passes. Then the applause came. Then the phones. Then the salutes. Officer Chen raised his right hand to his brow, held it rigid. Other veterans in the crowd, and there were more than Megan realized, morning commuters who understood what service meant, stood and saluted. 20 hands raised. 30. The applause became a roar that echoed off the marble and the tile and the vaulted ceiling of the station. Megan stood motionless by her locker. Her face remained expressionless, the professional mask of a woman trained to control every visible reaction. But her son saw her jaw clench. Her hands trembled, not violently, but enough that her grip on the locker door shifted. She looked at Thomas, blind and battered and alive, and for a fraction of a second, the mask slipped. Just a fraction. Just enough for the woman underneath to acknowledge the man she'd saved. The applause continued. People waved flags that appeared from nowhere, small American flags, military insignia, the colors of units and deployments. The crowd surged toward her, not in hostility but in recognition, in the ancient acknowledgement of someone who had walked toward danger when everyone else walked away. Through the crowd, Megan saw Derek Whitfield emerge from his office on the mezzanine level. She watched his face drain of color, watched his jaw go slack, watched his hand move to his pocket where his phone lived. His phone that contained the calls he'd made. His phone that recorded the footage no one yet knew was already viral. His phone that was about to become evidence. Megan's eyes met his across the chaos of the platform. No expression. No vindication. No anger. Just the flat, terrifying gaze of someone who had made the calculations and accepted the costs. Just the gaze of a woman who had always known how this would end. Whitfield stood in his office doorway, the phone screen inches from his face. 2,400,000 views. The video was everywhere, his face contorted with rage, paper scattering across the platform like snow, Megan on her knees gathering them with the kind of dignity that made him look like a villain in a feature film. The comments weren't comments anymore. They were indictments. Coward. Bully. That's a decorated officer. Each word was a nail in a coffin he'd been building for 18 months without knowing it. His phone buzzed. The regional director, do not call me. Buzz. The city attorney's office requesting a meeting Monday at 8 in the morning regarding his employment status. Buzz. An email from the licensing board flagged urgent. His hand started to shake, and he gripped the doorframe to steady them. Downstairs, through the office windows, he could see the Marine colonel speaking with transit police, handing them a folder, thick, orderly, the kind of folder that contained the kind of evidence that ended careers. The folder contained everything. Falsified invoices dating back 18 months. His brother-in-law's company, Sterling Construction Solutions, the name dripping with old money and older corruption, had been overbilling the city for maintenance work that was never completed. New roof repairs that involved no new roof. VAC system overhauls that never happened. 23,000 in electrical work performed by a crew that didn't exist. And the city had paid it. All of it. Whitfield had signed off on the invoices, his signature a loop of entitlement and greed that looked like nothing now except evidence. But that wasn't the worst part. Megan knew. She'd known since day one. He understood it now, the way she'd asked innocent questions in those first weeks. What contractor did the North Platform rewiring? Casual. Polite. The way she'd stayed late, supposedly organizing supply closets, really photographing documents with a phone that had probably been reporting directly to federal investigators. He'd been standing next to a Navy Special Forces operative trained in surveillance and evidence collection, and he'd yelled at her for knocking over coffee. The strategic miscalculation hit him like a physical blow. His phone buzzed again. The text was from a number he hadn't seen in 15 years. Dr. Marcus Ashford. His medical school mentor. The man whose recommendation letter had opened every door Whitfield had ever walked through, whose name Whitfield had dropped in 17 job interviews, 3 grant applications, and the personal statement for his MBA. The message read, "I saw the video. You disgust me. I have contacted the State Medical Licensing Board and requested a full review of your character fitness credentials and job application history. Do not contact me again. Character fitness review." That phrase meant they were going to examine every credential Whitfield had claimed, every degree he'd cited, every achievement he'd attributed to himself. They were going to look at his background check, his references, the university transcripts he'd sent. And when they did, they were going to find that he'd never actually completed his medical degree, he'd dropped out in year 2, but he'd maintained the pretense, joined hospital administration instead, and listed himself as Dr. Whitfield everywhere anyway. The credential was false. The title was false. Everything he'd built at the station, built on the authority of a title he didn't possess, was false. By noon, the Regional Transit Authority announced his immediate suspension pending investigation. By 3 in the afternoon, federal auditors had seized his office files and were photographing every document on every shelf. By 6 p.m., his wife had called his cell phone from an attorney's office and informed him the house locks had been changed. By midnight, He was in a hotel room near the airport, watching the news coverage of the contractor fraud case. 17 arrests. 40 million in recovered funds. His brother-in-law being escorted from his office in handcuffs. The mayor calling for a complete ethics review of the transit authority's procurement practices. Whitfield's career wasn't ending. It had already ended. It was decomposing in real time, publicly, with a camera crew documenting every second. 6 months later, the platform was bright with morning light, the sun cutting through the station's glass roof like a blade. Megan stood in navy dress blues, the fabric the color of deep water, her ribbons and medals catching the light, bronze star, silver star, purple heart again. She'd worn the uniform exactly twice before, both times at ceremonies she'd attended in disguise, watching from the back of rooms. This was the first time she wore it without pretense. Thomas Reid stood beside her, his hand on her arm, his posture so military straight it looked like a prayer held in his spine. The crowd was small, invited only. Station employees. Reporters from the local news. A few commuters who'd recognized the military vehicles in the parking lot and slowed their morning commute. The new station manager, Eleanor Chen, stood to the side with her hands folded. She'd arrived 3 months after Whitfield's suspension and had immediately initiated an ethics review that uncovered not just the fraud but also the workplace harassment logs, 23 documented incidents that should have triggered action years ago. The Marine colonel stepped forward, his dress uniform so pressed it could cut paper. His voice carried across the platform with the kind of authority that came from commanding men in combat. We're here to honor Petty Officer First Class Thomas Reid for his cooperation in the federal investigation into contractor fraud, which resulted in 17 convictions and the recovery of $40,200,000 in city funds. He held up a commendation medal. Petty Officer Reid's testimony was crucial. His courage in coming forward, despite personal threats to his safety, exemplifies the character we honor in the military. The medal caught the light. It spun once as the colonel pinned it to Thomas's chest. The crowd applauded, not the polite applause of obligation, but the genuine sound of people understanding they were witnessing something true. Megan's hand rested on Thomas's back. She didn't smile. Her face was composed the way a still lake is composed, reflecting everything without revealing anything. Then the colonel turned to her. Master Chief Petty Officer Megan O'Brien served in the Special Forces for 18 years, he said. She was inserted into this station as part of a federal investigation into suspected organized crime, contractor fraud, and threats to federal witnesses. During her deployment, she performed an emergency pericardiocentesis on Petty Officer Reid using improvised tools when a trained cardiologist was not available, saving his life in a procedure that should have required a hospital operating room. Her actions exemplify the standard we hold in military medicine. We are proud to present her with the Military Distinguished Service Medal for Valor and Service. The medal was different from Thomas's, larger, the ribbon a deeper red, the weight of it visible even from a distance. The colonel pinned it to Megan's chest. His eyes met hers for 1 second, and he nodded. Not a salute. Something more profound. Soldier to soldier. The rest of the crowd understood they were witnessing an acknowledgement of something they didn't fully have words for. Outside, through the station windows, 50 feet away in the parking lot, Derek Whitfield sat at a grey folding table beside the entrance to a strip mall tax preparation office. His suit was gone. The designer watches, the silk ties, the custom shoes that cost more than some people's monthly rent, all gone. He wore a wrinkled polo shirt stained at the collar. His hair, which had always been perfectly maintained, looked like he'd stopped thinking about it. A handwritten cardboard sign on an easel read, "Low rates. Quick approval." No one stopped at his table. A commuter had approached once, 3 weeks in, and Whitfield had started to explain his rates before he noticed the woman recognize him from the video. She'd walked away without speaking. Since then, the table had been empty except for pamphlets nobody took and water bottles nobody drank. Back inside the station, the new manager, Eleanor Chen, presented Megan with a plaque engraved with words about service and dedication. Megan accepted it with a single nod, her movements economical, precise. When Danny, her son, stepped out from the crowd and hugged her, she closed her eyes and held on tight for the first time anyone had seen her do anything tight. Her shoulders dropped slightly. In that one moment, the walls came down. Just for 3 seconds. Then she released him, straightened her uniform, and turned back to the people who had assembled to honor her. Thomas stepped to the microphone. His hand found her arm again. "I asked Master Chief O'Brien what she wants people to remember from this," he said. His voice was steady, the voice of someone who'd been in combat and learned to speak truth into silence. "She told me something I think matters. She said, power is not a title. Power is the ability to help. She doesn't need the uniform to be who she is. But I'm glad she's wearing it today so people can see her. So people can understand that the woman saving your life might be working the coffee cart. The hero sitting next to you on the train might be wearing a janitor's uniform. And if you mock them, if you underestimate them, if you think the people around you don't matter, you'd better hope you're never the one who needs them." The crowd applauded. Trains rolled past, shaking the building. Morning commuters stopped in the terminal to watch. Some saluted. One elderly veteran in a wheelchair placed his hand over his heart. Megan accepted a handshake from the mayor. She accepted another from the police chief. She accepted them all with the same composure, the same straight posture, the same gaze that had seen things that would break most people. Once, she glanced out the window. Whitfield was still sitting at his folding table. A gust of wind had blown his cardboard sign off its easel, and he was chasing it across the parking lot, his polo shirt fluttering, his pants riding up slightly. His dignity, whatever remained of it, was 30 feet behind him and getting further away. Megan's expression didn't change. No satisfaction. No triumph. Just observation. Just the flat, steady gaze of someone who had made the calculations a long time ago and accepted the costs. She turned back to the people in the station, and she smiled. Not the smile of a nurse. The smile of a master chief. The smile of a woman who had walked 6 miles through enemy territory carrying a blind man on her back, who had sewn field tourniquets by touch in the dark, who had performed surgery with a pocket knife and the kind of calm that only comes from having already survived the worst. She smiled like someone who knew exactly who she was and had spent a long time waiting for everyone else to find out. If you made it this far, you already know the truth about quiet people. The ones you underestimate. The ones you mock. The ones sitting right beside you. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a story about the heroes everyone overlooks. Like this video. And tell me in the comments, have you ever been completely wrong about someone you judged by their uniform instead of their character?